welcome to Monday, September 21st, 2020. We are prepared to have a great week in 6th grade. So here's our weekly agenda. We have a lot that we're going to be accomplishing this week. You need to read this every single day. You should always know what's coming. And our weekly objectives, we're going to learn and use new vocabulary. We're going to learn to make inferences this week and use text evidence. We're going to talk about theme and central idea. We're going to talk about words and phrases and learn to determine the meaning of them based on their context. We're going to use context clues to help us determine word meaning, verify meaning with dictionary or other reference source. We're going to learn about complex and simple and complex sentences this week. And we're going to identify and use subordinating conjunctions in complex sentences. And right now, you might be thinking, I don't even know what that means. By the end of the week, you will know what that means, or you should know what that means. Our essential question is still, how do you find courage in the face of fear? I believe this is our last week with this essential question.
This is our last week with this essential question. And so this is your final week to really think about what it means to find courage in the face of fear and what that means for our story this week.
And so our story that we're going to be reading is called The Ravine.
That sounds kind of spooky.
Doesn't that sound kind of spooky? But I don't think it's a spooky story at all. It's actually a story that is about embarrassment, and it's kind of going to use what we learned last week to help us understand some things that happen with the characters in the story. Now, you need to go, after you watch this, you'll need to go and click on the video that is about previewing the text. And I believe Miss Norman is going to preview the story with you so that when we get ready to read that story tomorrow, you will already have ideas about what the story is going to be about. You'll know the genre and you'll know all of those things. So be sure you watch Miss Norman.
Watch my video.
Preview that story.
Yes.
You're going to like it.
You are. You're going to like it. It's really going to, I feel like you're going to enjoy it a lot. Now, we're going to get started with our vocabulary for the week, because not only do we have a new story to finish our first unit, we have some new vocabulary words this week that we're going to look at, and they are specific, precipice, rivulet, cascade, and murky.
Ooh, I like some of those words a lot.
Some of those words are real fun. And they're not really words that we use often, so we're probably going to really need our vocabulary words this week. And if you have been noticing, our vocabulary words always kind of go back to our story, right?
Yes, they do.
And so I bet these words have something to do with our story, The Ravine. And our first word is specific, and this is an adjective. And it means clearly defined or identified. Can you give me a specific example, please? And we have some synonyms that are certain and precise, and antonyms that are general. So
and if you look at the picture, if you were an archer and you were shooting an arrow, you would need to shoot your arrow at a specific target. That means an exact target. Now, I want you to listen. I'm going to pull my mask up a little so you can hear my voice clearly. Listen to this word and how it's pronounced. Specific. It is a word that I hear mispronounced a lot. This probably, out of all of the words this week, this is the one we use the most. Again, that word is specific.
And that is a tricky one. I know I hear a lot of people maybe say Pacific and kind of skip that spa sound. And our next word is murky. I like this word.
I like this word too.
This means dark, obscure, and gloomy. The sky was murky and a thin mist was falling. And we have some synonyms that are dismal
I like those synonyms too. Those
and
are great
dreary.
words.
Those are good words, good description words. And antonyms that are bright and clear.
And if you see the picture, it's kind of a picture maybe of a river or a creek.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if it's a creek or I would say it's a river. But the water, if you notice the water, it's real kind of dark and muddy looking. And you would say that water is murky. When you look at it, it's not clear.
Yes. And especially as we get into this fall with our Halloween coming up, we want to use some spooky adjectives. Murky is a really good
That is a
adjective.
good one. So is dismal.
So is dismal.
Dismal is a great word that just, I don't know, it just captures your feeling of, ooh,
Yes.
kind of spooky.
Our next word is rivulet, and this is a noun. This is a very small stream, so a very tiny bit of water. Sweat ran in rivulets down my back, so little streams. Synonyms are channel and stream, and antonym is rapids and gush. So it's the exact opposite of a real rolling river. It's very tiny and small.
Well, and on that picture, it's kind of hard to see, but right here, you can see just a little bit. Well, actually, I think there's like little tiny rivulets falling here too.
Mm-hmm.
But just tiny streams of water falling.
Yes. The next we have is cascade. To pour downward rapidly and in large quantities.
So this one's a verb.
Yes. This one is like waterfalls. And in shop, I watched water cascade down the stairs. Oh my goodness, should water be cascading downstairs?
No, something is really wrong if water is cascading down.
Something's happened. Synonyms are pour and gush, and antonyms are trickle and drip.
Well, and in that picture, you can definitely tell the water is cascading over the falls. I mean, it is just rapidly pouring over.
And our next word is precipice. This is a steep rock face or cliff. I stood carefully on the edge of the precipice. Synonyms are bluff and drop off, and antonyms are plateau and prairie.
And you can tell by that picture, she is right on the edge of that cliff. She's on the precipice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have actually been on the precipice of a cliff. It wasn't quite like that, but it was in Hawaii. And standing on the precipice, it was very scary because it was real windy.
Ooh.
And you were above the clouds and you kind of felt like you could fall if you weren't kind of low to the ground.
Oh.
So again, that feeling of scare, I think I could probably use that in a scary story.
I bet. And you were in Hawaii?
I was in Hawaii.
Our story this week takes place in Hawaii.
Ooh, that's cool.
That's a nifty
So
fact.
I'm going to have some prior knowledge about Hawaii that maybe other people aren't going to have.
Yes. And so our story is called The Ravine. And you can see our awesome little picture here. And it almost looks like maybe they're jumping into something. You've had experience being on a cliff in Hawaii. Is it scary?
It can be quite scary.
Mm.
You have to be careful sometimes because the rocks can be real jagged and the water can be fierce.
Oh, goodness.
So we know that it takes place in Hawaii and that it has to do with, I'm guessing, water.
Mm-hmm.
And since it relates to our story that our informational text from last week, embarrassment is going to come into play somewhere.
I'm very interested in
Very
the story.
interested in the story.
So sometimes it's difficult to do something you're afraid to do, just because you may be embarrassed to let other people know you're scared to do it. And so to get started, we are going to list some smart reasons that we can overcome fear, and then we're going to list some silly reasons.
Okay, so some smart reasons to overcome a fear.
Maybe the thing that you're afraid of is actually helpful, like getting a shot?
Oh, yeah. Should we try to get over that fear?
Probably.
Probably so, because we know that medicine can help us.
And so that's something that my daughters had to
Yeah.
overcome, is her fear of
I
shame.
had to overcome that fear too. I wouldn't
Yes.
say it's 100%, but
Yeah, it's not
it's
fun.
kind of hard to get over those fears.
But that
But I
would be a
know it's
smart
important.
reason.
So what would be a silly reason?
Maybe to impress your friends.
Oh, I'm afraid of tripping and falling, and so I walk really crazy to make sure I don't trip because I
Mhm.
want to impress you and I don't want you to laugh at me.
Yeah,
That's kind of silly.
that's kind of silly. And so maybe doing something not for others and not for yourself, and kind of doing it for the wrong reasons is a silly
that
reason.
would be a silly reason.
And so this is our author, and his name is Graham Salisbury. And in the preview, you're going to get to look at some really important information about Mr. Salisbury and his background and how that plays into the ravine. So be sure to watch the preview video. And then again, this is all going to be
In the video.
the
so you need to
preview
watch.
video.
We're going to talk about it.
And so now,
We're going to talk about simple and complex sentences. So last week, we should have learned the 4 things that are needed in a sentence. A capital, a subject, a verb, and a period, exclamation mark, or question mark. So this week, we're going to learn about the different types of sentences.
And so a simple sentence is going to include a subject, the who. It's going to include a predicate, so the action. It's going to express a complete thought.
Okay.
And an example is, the boys went to the park.
So, what is our subject? The boys, that's the who.
That's my who.
And they went, that's my predicate. And I'm going to express the whole thought, the boys went
To the
to the
park.
park. I start with a capital and a period.
And so now we have, we like pizza.
Who likes pizza?
We.
What do they do in that sentence? Like. What is the whole thought? We like pizza.
Yes. So a simple sentence is also called an independent clause. That means it can stand by itself.
Because independent means all alone.
And so complex sentences are a little bit different.
So what does complex mean? If something is complex, it takes a little bit more to do it. Simple means easy. Complex means a little bit harder. So now we're going to look at sentences that are a little bit harder. They're a little bit more 6th grade kind of sentences. Because when I think of simple sentences, a lot of times I think of, that's sentences that maybe we used 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, or we use occasionally in our writing, but we don't want just to, like in our journals, to just be writing simple sentences. I like ice cream. I ran home. My brother found me. My dog barked. Because that would get boring.
Yeah.
In 6th grade, we want to start mixing it up a little bit and adding to it.
And so our complex sentences, they contain an independent clause, that simple sentence, but they also contain something called a dependent clause. And a dependent clause begins with a subordinating conjunction. And so some examples are, because the boys went to the park, they did not go to the zoo. And so complex sentences are a little tricky because you have to identify the independent clause and the dependent clause. So the independent clause is a simple sentence that can stand by itself. So when we look at this example, because the boys went to the park, they did not go to the zoo. Which part of that sentence can stand on its own and make complete sense?
Let's try both parts out. Because the boys went to the park, they did not go to the zoo. Well, the part that makes sense by itself is they did not go to the zoo. That tells me they, and what did they do? They did not go. Okay, that makes sense.
And so if we look at, because the boys went to the park, we kind of stop for a second and think, well,
That doesn't quite
that doesn't
make
finish
sense.
the thought, right? So the boys did not go to the zoo because they went to the park. And so now we have that same sentence just flipped a little bit differently. And we still have both the independent and the dependent clause in the sentence.
And I've noticed in our writing, sometimes we like to just put that dependent clause, and we forget to tell the rest of the thought, because I felt embarrassed yesterday. But you don't tell me, well, what caused that embarrassment? It kind of doesn't finish your thoughts, and I've noticed we've had that a lot.
I've
not
seen that
finishing
too.
those thoughts.
Yes, and so sometimes we look at the question that we're asked, and then we just write, because they wanted to go. Well, that's not a complete thought. And so it's very important that we make sure we write complete sentences when we try and put down our thoughts on paper or answer questions. So you will look for these subordinating conjunctions in a complex sentence, because it's really important to be able to identify them. That way you can just look in the sentence and see if they're there. So after, before, because, although, when, since, if, whenever, unless, while, that, even though, until. These are the subordinating conjunctions that you're going to look for in sentences. Does that mean that you're going to have all of these in everything that you've looked at? No. Okay? But just these are clues to help you find them in the sentence. And so we're going to look at a few sentences, and we're going to determine if they are simple or complex. Jason walked his dogs before school. Well, I don't see any of those subordinating conjunctions.
No.
And this seems like a pretty complete thought. I think this one is simple.
Jason walked. I think that's a simple sentence.
So
And we were correct.
Yes, it just contains a subject and a predicate. Maria went to the store because she was out of cereal.
Oh, I hear one of those words that
Yes.
was mentioned. I hear the word because.
And so we have a complex sentence here because it contains the independent clause that Maria went to the store, but it also has our dependent clause because she was out of cereal.
It kind of tells us the rest of the story.
Mm-hmm.
You told me the little part, tell me the rest of that part.
Thomas ate all of the oatmeal.
I don't hear any of those words.
Me either.
I'm thinking Thomas ate, but it doesn't tell me why he ate all the oatmeal. It doesn't tell me any more about it. I think this is simple.
We are correct, yes.
Subject and a predicate.
A subject and a predicate. And so now, before I could make my bed, I had to wash my sheets. Well, I'm kind of noticing that sometimes we have this introductory phrase with this comma here, and that kind of tells me that there may be a little bit more work.
Looking.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, if I switched that around and I said I had to wash my sheets before I could make my bed, that tells me why I'm having to wash my sheets. So that kind of helps to give me a clue. I bet that word before is a key word I need to look at.
Yes. And so this one is a complex sentence.
There we go.
So we have our independent clause, I had to wash my sheets, and our dependent clause, because before I could make my bed. The silly dogs rolled in brown mud.
These silly dogs rolled in brown mud.
Well, now there's a lot of adjectives
There's
there.
a lot of adjectives or describing words,
Mhm.
but I don't hear any of those special words that you had on that slide.
Yes. So this one is just going to be a simple sentence. It contains our subject and our predicate. After my birthday party, I took a long nap. Ooh, we've got that comma again.
Ooh, whenever there's a comma, it makes me stop and think.
And we've got our special word.
So if I flip those two sides, I took a long nap after my birthday party. Does it tell me why I'm doing something? It does.
Yes.
It's telling me why I took a long, or when I took a long nap. So that word after must be the special word I'm looking for.
And so that is another complex sentence. We have our independent clause, I took a long nap, and we have our dependent, after my birthday party. And so now you get to try.
I want you to try it.
Okay, and so it may be a little tricky at first, so go back to those slides and look.
I was going to say, this is what I would do if I were at home. One of two things. First, I would either open up my slideshow back to that first slide and have it open, the slide that has all those words on it. Can we go back to that slide real quick? Or I would take a piece of paper and write those words down to keep them next to me. These words right here.
So make sure you either have the slideshow up to refer back to those special words, or you can write those special words down on a piece of paper.
And you might not know this about me, Miss Norman, but I like to take things and try to make a song or something. And so looking at these words, I came up with a real quick song that I could write those words down and keep singing over and over, and it might help me.
Awesome.
So I just picked a tune. I picked Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Awesome.
And I thought, after before because, although, when, since, if, whenever, unless, while, that, even though, until, these are words that I need to know.
That's awesome.
I think anytime you can find a way to remember things with music, it's always a good thing. So write those words down, sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and learn those words, and then you will be able to pick out your complex sentences.
That's fantastic. That's a nifty little song. Scooching back through here. And so you guys are going to be able to knock this assignment out of the park today.
I know you can do it. I know you can do it.
And whew, you did it,
You get
guys.
to mark it as done.
Done.
Now, you can't mark this as done until you go and watch Mrs. Norman talk a little bit more about the ravine. I know you're going to want to know what it's all about. So check it out.
Yes. And we will see you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.